All right, let's talk about the sampling distributions. Now, sampling distributions, if you're using Brace's 10th edition book, is in section 6.4. So my notes, it's in chapter 7.1, but it is really just section 6.4 in the 10th edition. So what I want you to know from sampling distributions is really quite easy. We've already talked about in chapter 1 what a sample is and the fact that a sample produces statistics, and we're using those statistics to estimate the parameters of the population, because it's the population that we can't really get a good handle on. In most cases, we can't come up with the entire population. So sampling is the best way to do that. Now, we want to make inferences usually about the population. So this is what we use the sampling distributions for. So three types of inferences that we may be interested in are estimations, and we can do this with just finding a statistic to estimate a parameter, and that we call a point estimate. So if I were to say something about estimation here, one of the things that I would want to make clear to you is that in estimation, one of our important types is a point estimate. And we've already seen some important point estimates, and some of the important point estimates that we have seen are those for the mean, so the x bar. And we've also seen one that we haven't really used notation for, but it's called p hat. We've seen the s squared for the variance, and later on we'll also be doing some point estimates that involve the ratio of s squareds. So not point estimates, sorry, we'll be using the point estimate s squared as a ratio to do some other testing. So this point estimation, well, they're nice, right? The x bar gives you an estimation for the population mean, mu. P hat gives you a point estimate for the population parameter p, and s squared gives you a point estimate for the population parameter sigma squared. So those are great, but a single value, we know a single value is either right or it's wrong, and most of the time it's wrong. So one of the things we like to do is we like to give a bigger estimate, something we call a confidence interval, and that's what we'll be studying in the next chapter of Brace's book, which in edition number 10 is chapter 8. So is chapter 7. So this confidence intervals, they're going to use point estimates to develop an interval of values, which is a nicer thing to have for estimation. Now further, we're going to be doing some testing for making decisions based upon our sample statistics, and we'll also use regression. So those are kinds of inferences that we'll be using. And the fact that all of these point estimates have a distribution known as the sampling distributions, that is very important in our ability to make inferences based upon these sample statistics. So when we talk about sampling distribution, the two sample statistics that we deal with the most often right now are these right here, the mean of the sample and the population, or the sample proportion. And those two actually have a normally distributed sampling distribution, which that's why we're studying the normal distribution. And then later we'll learn also that the standard deviations, the variances, they have a distribution called the chi-squared distribution, which will allow us to make inferences based upon them as well. So that's kind of what we're after. Now, it's really kind of interesting, and I don't want to take the time here either, but it's interesting to take a look at a random sample that's created using a distribution that doesn't look anything like a normal distribution, and then sample from that distribution random variables that are created through that distribution, and then see that yes, indeed, that the sample means for those are indeed normally distributed, and they do have a mean that is approximately equal to that of the population. And the standard deviation of that, the larger the sample, the less jitter the deviation from the actual mean is. And that's really what we want to take away from sampling distribution studies. So the thoughts that I'm going to leave you with here are that number one, that we're going to be talking about X bars as a point estimate to get us at our means. And we're going to talk about our sample proportions, p hats, to get us to our population proportion, p. And we're going to be talking about our sample variances to get us at our population variance, sigma squared. So those are the estimations that we'll be talking about. And we start out with points, and then we're going to learn about confidence intervals. So you've got confidence intervals to look forward to in the next chapter.